Oh, it's gonna be all right. All right, I want you to know that you've come a long, 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 long way. And you've still got a long way to go. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I am the blind blogger, Maxwell Ivy, and this is another episode of What's Your Excuse? Where we challenge your excuses that are holding you back and keeping you from accomplishing the big goals and dreams that you have for your life. And I'll do that by bringing you interviews with people who have overcome adversity, thrived in spite of difficult life circumstances, struck out on their own and started an amazing new business, or are experts who can share actionable real-world advice with you. And occasionally somebody who I just happen to admire, respect, and want to talk to. You can find me at theblindblogger.net, theblindblogger.net. I also want to mention that the show is sponsored this week by my friends Chip and Pam Edwards at Create My Voice. That's at createmyvoice.com. And they're the people who have managed to get my podcast and my blog on the Alexa and Google Home speakers. So now I have the potential of reaching millions of people that may not have heard about me or had the option of finding me through the usual search engines or my email list. And they can do the same for you. It's a pretty easy process, and they're really nice people. And if you just head over to createmyvoice.com, they will also fix your website and your blog and your podcast up so you'll have the option of more people hearing you, because it doesn't matter how good your story is. It doesn't matter how good your advice is. It doesn't matter how good your product or service is if nobody knows about it. All right, so today I'm lucky again. I'm going to be talking with James Roberts. He was born with femoral dysplasia, floating hip, and scoliosis. He went on to be a champion paralympic athlete in swimming, rowing, and seated volleyball. He's now a health and fitness coach. He continues to encourage others. And he also has a podcast called Mindset Game, which is another place where you can get more inspiration and education to help you improve yourself in a physical manner as well as your mental approach. And you can find him at fitamputee.co.uk. So, James, good morning or good afternoon where you are, and welcome to What's Your Excuse?
Maxwell, thanks again for the introduction.
Oh, thanks for you coming on my show. Also for being, what I consider a good friend in the online community through our various Facebook groups and just supporting each other. So I appreciate your help.
Oh, I'm absolutely honored to come on your show.
Well, thank you. So, what I'd like to do is I'd like to start off by asking a question that hopefully will get us off to a good start, and that is, I understand you recently had a health setback or maybe a recurrence, and it caused some anxiety, and you're now dealing with the physical and mental. And I just wanted you to talk a little bit about how our health is something that we never get to an end point with. There's always a potential for new injuries or changes in our life, and just how you've been dealing with that and what you think about it.
I think with that, Maxwell, I think people get obsessed to a certain extent and do overcomplicate things because they think, and we were talking about this before we started recording, people think of the difficulty will come when they either want to lose weight, transform in some kind of way, and actually make a massive impact and a great deal of change within their life. And I do surprise people, and this is actually a question I was asked not too long ago, because somebody wanted to once they were happy and content at being a certain weight, what did they have to do to be able to maintain that? And I said, well, it's actually going to be more difficult than you going from, and I use the analogy of going on the freeway, or motorway kind of analogy of, okay, you think going from point A to point B is going to be difficult. Try staying at point B and trying maintaining it's, to a certain extent, it's an illusion of where you see you're going to be most happiest. And I think you need to take a step back at times. And I'll use my story as I got to a state of anxiety, probably due to stress, overwhelm, and things just kind of got out of hand. And I actually lost a lot of weight. So people will probably, to a certain extent, envious, whereas I would hear stories of, you look like you've lost weight. Did you mean to lose weight? And I'm thinking to myself, coming from my background in sport and obviously health and fitness, well, I'm not used to hearing these sort of anecdotes and people telling me I look a certain way, because to me, I look, are you telling me I'm unwell? Do I look sick? And I got people to actually, can you go beyond that initial comment and give me a little bit more substance? Because it's like, this is freaking me out, because you're telling me that I don't look my normal self. And I think once I gradually got out of what is a dark place, hitting rock bottom, and started coming back out, and I was able to express that better, it's like, well, maybe the initial thought, yes, I wanted to lose weight because I'd put quite a bit on, and people would be quite surprised to hear that. But that was due, at that particular time, I was working in education, and obviously people can relate to, be it from a working environment, working with kids. You hear the quote, working with kids, animals, you don't want to go down that route, in terms of it brings its own stresses on board. So I was taking all the wrong avenues, per se, to be able to get an instant hit of energy. So be it, coffee, everything that was necessarily what I know, per se, is not the best way. I could have gone down a different route, but I kind of pushed it aside, brushed it aside. I was like, well, I'm only going to do it short term, and it just kind of spiraled out of control, and it became just the norm. And then I think that's where it headed, in that direction of hitting anxiety, is because I'd come so far removed from what was my normality of being very health oriented, health conscious, that I had anxiety around even little things of sugar, and I wasn't thinking logically, because it's, from people within my field, it's a natural response to have a reaction towards any sort of carbohydrate. It doesn't have to necessarily be something of sugar, but that's the body's first choice of energy source to be able to function. And once I was able to actually, through counseling and learning and implementing steps to get better, you're thinking, well, the body's only responding naturally to what it needs to do. It's getting energy. It's giving you that quick boost of energy to function. And then once I was in a state of being able to deal with that, I was okay. But it's reminding people of getting to this state of normality. You need to be content. You're not doing it for somebody else. You're doing it for you. And then if you're okay with that, and I think it is telling people and reassuring there's nothing wrong with fluctuating.
Right. So are we talking like in large amounts of sugar, energy drinks, amphetamines? I mean, as far as trying to maintain your energy?
Oh, I didn't go extreme as that. It would be candy, sweets over here, lots of processed food. And I should have known better, but I think because you get into a habit, a routine of doing it day in, day out. I wasn't eating like that for every single meal. I was having a nutritious meal at night, but obviously, as what I've alluded to now, I eat I would say, nutritiously a little bit. I'm not going to say obsessively towards.
Oh, come on. We both know, in the world we live in, even somebody who wants to be healthy can only do so much. So, I mean, me or you might consider nutritious, somebody else might go, I can't believe you're eating those processed items in your diet, or I can't believe you're eating cheese, or I can't believe you aren't eating kale. I'm sure there's really only so much we can do when it comes to a healthy meal. So if it's what you consider healthy and you're maintaining your weight, then then that's a great starting point. So I also like that I thought it was interesting that where you live, the people were saying, "Are you unwell?" Where I live, people would be going, "You're losing weight. Can you tell me how you're doing it?" You know?
I think somebody in my work environment, they did, but I was
Oh,
like,
okay.
and this was towards probably where I was getting better. I'm thinking, no, you don't, because I can relate to, well, I'm at a certain weight, and it kind of happened overnight that I started to feel better, but it was probably steps in place I put in. But because you live it day in, day out, you don't look at the importance of those well, what are massive factors. So if somebody's saying to me, "Oh, what did you do to be able to," I said, "Well, do you want anxiety to have this, to have the benefits of it?" It's like, I know you want the
Yeah.
benefits of the weight loss, but I can assure you, you don't want to be living on edge. I
Right.
wasn't 24/7, but pretty close. Be it your body's on overdrive because it's in fight or flight mode all the time. I didn't like it, so I was like, "Do you really want the two together? I know you want the latter, but I can assure you don't want the former."
Right. I told somebody at church a few weeks back. I said blindness has taught me patience. He said, "Man, that's a really high price to pay for patience." You
Yeah, but
know.
would you put that down to that comes down to perspective, doesn't
Oh
it?
yes, yes, it does. It comes down to perspective. So, I also visited your website, and um, I'm just really jealous that in Great Britain you were able to go through the national health system and you were able to get help with your anxiety. Here in the U.S., if I have anxiety, I'm going to unless I have really good insurance, which requires a large annual income and a big investment in monthly premiums, I'm not going to get help. I'm going to self-diagnose. I'm going to read on the internet. I'm probably going to end up taking either supplements or possibly, prescription drugs that may or may not be good for me. So, you talk a little bit about how they were able to help you, and a little bit about the system, because uh, I'm just wondering, how you finally realized that you had it and what the process was to get to this point where you're at now.
I think if we start at the very beginning, it was, I didn't, how would I actually put it into words? I think when I realized that I had a problem, I was like breaking down emotionally. I'd be crying for no apparent reason, be it, um, I think what was the trigger for me was Remembrance Day, and I was crying for no reason. That's okay. It is an upsetting factor that so many people lost their lives during World War I and World War II, but I was having that connection to my grandmother that had died. I was trying to think about 15 years ago plus, and I was putting that connection on that. Did I actually fully grieve at that time? Probably not, because it was trying to be put on this facade that I need to have a bravado. I need to be strong for the rest of my family. I did break down to a certain extent at the crematorium, but did I fully grieve when I was, how old I've been, about 15, 16? Probably not, because once I come back from where I now reside and went back to Belgium, where we were living at the time, I went back to school. I brushed it under the carpet. I wanted to get back to normality straight away. I didn't tell teachers. I didn't tell my principal. I didn't tell anybody. I kind of did it. Well, talking about what you're talking about, self-diagnosis. I wanted to deal with it my way, and I think, wow, it would have been stigmatized back then. Mental health.
Well,
It's
it
not what
still
it
is.
is. I think if it would have been it being in a better place today, back then, I'd probably be a little bit more open. But then on the flip side of that, I was probably much more open with my feelings as a youngster, be it because my mother, aunt and grandmother was very much influential on my upbringing. So me being, not having that male role model to speak of, so to speak, be it from my father figure, I would have probably from a sporting connection. put me at ease. I think it hasn't come to probably till about when I've got older as well. You were okay with it back then to talk about your feelings when you needed to vent frustration, you name it, sadness, and talk about, well, what has got you in this state. And I think sport hasn't helped me because, and I'll give it a kick in it needs, because I think we're told and kind of learn this behavior. We need to be robots to a certain extent. I need to mask my feelings, because if I give away how I'm feeling to another individual, they can take advantage of it. So I think from that perspective, it did take away from me to a certain extent. I would say not my identity, but me being me, I'm not going to be a doormat or be a pushover, but I need to be me. And once I've realized that, and seeking help and say, well, I can see that as a problem. I'm not per se myself. And I think my actual general practice surgery is they try something more experimental. They kind of phase it in where everything is under one roof, be it doctors, nurses, physios, mental health practitioners. So if you went to a doctor and you said, Papa, I've got this problem, okay, we'll put the anxiety, depression all into one sphere. I broke down in actual speaking to the doctor about it. So they had me do a test as to, is it anxiety or is it depression? And then give you the necessary help that you need to thereafter. So we've got teams in place where they'll look after certain individuals by where you live. But I said, well, the person that looks after the mental health side of things isn't the lead person for my team, but he'd known me, be it, oh God, when did I meet him first of all? About 2 years ago. So he's got a baseline as well. This is what James was like day to day back then. This is the symptoms that he's presenting right now. And we can discuss where do I want to get to in the future. So it was, whereas the other person, I would have to explain, well, this is what I was like in the past. This is where I'm at now. Let's kind of jump a step from that perspective as, well, you know what I was like. I'm not going to give too much away, but be it more bubbly, not apprehensive, so to speak, and not very much unhinged, whereas now I'm very much on the back foot, a little bit more reserved, kind of recluse to a certain extent, and let's try and not go down the pharmaceutical route of giving pills and things. Let's go but down the holistic approach and see if that works and solves the issue. Great. If it doesn't, obviously we've got to go back to the former with the pharmaceuticals to be able to solve the problem. And I was lucky. The holistic approach worked for me. And there were just suggestions. Would you try that? Would be willing to try this? Would you be willing to try that? And it was just a little bit of trial and error. And I think slowly as I've gone through that process, I think people are quite shocked, because I went to the bar. I know I'm going off topic a little bit now. Went to the barber last week, and I went into the shop. Oh, what do you suggest? And kind of their look on their faces. Oh, we don't get that kind of request all the time. But I think it was because I'm very content with where I'm at. It's like I'm willing to be risk adverse, or quite dangerous sometimes, because it's
So your barber realized you went from somebody who would tell him how to cut your hair to somebody who's like, what do you think? I'm open to you doing pretty much whatever you want to, whatever you think would look good on me. So that is a big change. And there used to be a time that your bartender and your barber knew you better than a lot of other people in your life. So I'm not really surprised that he noticed. I do want to mention one thing. A lot of times in podcasts, I get asked questions and I have to work through them myself during the interview. And I've had quote coaches who are like, Max, those really don't make you look good. You should try not to do that. And I'm like, I'm sorry. I think that the more honest and authentic I can be, the better it helps my potential listeners. I've never asked a guest a question that he had to think about and worked through while he was on my show. So thank you for giving me that experience. I'm really honored you were willing to go there, because most people just aren't. They think they have to show that facade, as you called it, all the time.
Well, I don't like to. It is a process, because I think, be it from a coaching perspective, I think I've been taught or have seen on social media, you need to not try and be a different person for a different environment. So if I use the example of, you're going to be a certain way with your friends and family, you're going to be a different person within a sporting arena, and then you're going to be a different person for in front of your business. You can't do that, because when the two overlap, the people will say, well, why are you a certain way here and you're a certain way there? Whereas it is a continuing process of being able to do, I'm showing me in all those arenas. Okay, the family and friends and the sporting arena are probably closer to my heart, so they're easier to be able to overlap. That you're going to get be my sense of humor, my banter, me being me, whereas I won't take things to heart. Whereas the business is quite difficult at times. It's like, well, I'd like to show you this, but I still want boundaries. But I think when you are willing to open up, be vulnerable, and be the authentic self, I think that's where people can really connect and see the authenticity of you as a person. Because it's like, well, you're not shying away from adversity, things you've had to endure over your life. Whereas, be it like, if we talk about like the mental health thing, I'm not all right with that. I'm okay with that, because it was not self-diagnosis, but me giving myself counseling and looking at, well, if I talk about it, it obviously lowers the stigma of it, because more and more people are willing to do that, and then it might help somebody else. But I wasn't looking at it as looking for sympathy. I don't even think I've ever even written above the post, I'm not looking for sympathy. It'd be, this is what I've done. I'm not saying it's going to be clear and cut for you. This is what's worked for me. You might be able to take one or two strategies that I implemented. You might have to implement more, but it's that willingness to be open-minded to that outcome. And I think we're coming back to with the adverse situation, it's generally other people say, you've had an adverse upbringing, your situation has been difficult. I know no different. I've kind of had family that's been very, I won't say ruthless, but very old school in their way of thinking. It's, we're going to throw you in the deep end. Do you sink or do you swim? And I think that's the positivity I've had from such a young age. And it's only probably in the last couple of years that I've started to go have those momentary lapses of, self-doubt, having an inkling of what others think of it. Whereas you put me when I was a kid, in a sporting sense, to a certain degree, probably I did care what others thought of me, because it's, you are judged, be it from a coaching perspective, a teammate perspective, on your performance. Whereas I think as a kid, I know I've got this disability. If you don't like me, I probably didn't care, because I had that good connection around me. So I think it's remembering that you can't please everybody.
Right. I appreciate that. In my family, it was the same way. It was, there was 4 families, all of them involved in the carnival business. There was probably 15 or 20 cousins who played together, and there was really never any other than when it had to be, such as for school or for safety. There was really never any, you're different than the rest of them. So appreciate that. I'm talking with James Roberts. He is a fitness coach, former Paralympic champion athlete, and you can find him at fitamputee.co.uk. I really got to work on that, because y'all got different letters over there. Okay, so why don't you tell people a little bit more about your disability as people would see it now, and some of your some of your early days growing up?
Gosh, Mac, that's a very hard question. I do like people that they'll ask about it, and why I use it as kind of an amputee kind of perspective, to a certain extent, it's me being lazy, because it means I don't have to explain it. But you asking in
Oh, I
terms of,
so get that. Go ahead.
but I think if we actually go into the nitty gritty of it, be it you talking about femoral dysplasia, it's the medical term for the disability, and let's see if I can get this right because sometimes I get it wrong. I'm missing my femur, which is the top portion of the leg, thigh. I have a small tibia and fibula, what would be in the ankle, and that is in what is actually attached to my hip. So when I say amputation, I think people be able to visualize it better, because it's like, well, we know what an amputation looks like. We've seen it on television, see it in magazines. It's more and more commonplace now because of more and more conflicts that our nations have been in. So it's not troublesome. You don't really have to explain what it is. And be it, okay, if I'm in shorts or something like that, you can see that I have an artificial leg. So I think people can relate to that. But mine's a little bit more complex in terms of the nature. And obviously you could say it's a birth defect, but how it's transpired to be it coming to that fruition and what the causes are, I don't know.
Right, and how that played into your sporting career.
And I think this is a great one from a Facebook perspective, because it was an amputee group said, what are you thankful for, be it your amputation? And I came from obviously a different field altogether, be it if it wasn't for the disability, I obviously wouldn't have the opportunity to, one, speak to obviously loads and loads of podcasts, be it because of my story. And then secondly, I wouldn't have had the sporting journey that I was able to accomplish for over a decade if it hadn't been for the disability. Okay, my childhood ambitions were to be an athlete, but once I turned into a teenager, it's like, well, those are unrealistic. You're not going to be a soccer player or play basketball at an able-bodied level because it's unfeasible. It's unrealistic. What avenues are you going to do instead? So it kind of, you could call it fate. I would call it just things kind of had a domino effect and kind of fell into my lap. Sport actually kind of found me, and then I kind of hit the ground running, had the right people in my corner, and it kind of had a domino effect from there. It kind of went, even if something went wrong, another door seemed to open.
Yeah, I noticed that you went from swimming, and then when it looked like you were not as successful in swimming, you went to rowing, and then after rowing, the seated volleyball. It was like as maybe your time in one sport was over, a brand new sport with different challenges showed up.
Well, I was probably more negative than that, as to when one door shut, another one opened. It would be, well, I would use it as within sport, well, Paralympic sport and disability sport more specifically. I think Wales is at the forefront. So me having it on my doorstep is I would say a privilege and a blessing, because they kind of have your, maybe a lesser degree nowadays, but that is, it takes two to lose connection. But back in those days, it would be, I saw it as, okay, one door shuts, what do I do now? I'd envisioned as when I'd been dropped from the swimming program, I was at university. I think I would say a little bit excited. Okay, I get to be a student when I come back. But I got a phone call probably a couple of days later. Okay, what is your thoughts about doing, obviously, rowing? And I thought, well, I don't know. I don't know what to think. So I'm quite close with my mother anyway. I picked up the phone. What's your thoughts? And I kind of use this as could call it clickbait to a certain extent. It'll get somebody to opinionate and get people to alienate themselves and be one side of the fence or the other. she says she doesn't remember saying it in this way, but I think I use it because it probably makes a greater impact. You could be very, very good, or absolutely useless, and that will put somebody on. Well, how could somebody say that to you? But I never saw it as I never saw it as a negative. I saw it as a positive. It's like, well, if I'm good at it, we roll with it. If I'm not if I'm useless at it, well, obviously I won't continue with it and I'll do something else. But it's that takes a positive mindset to probably envision that, whereas maybe somebody else would be maybe on the fence or maybe a little bit more pessimistic. It's like, well, that'd be soul destroying. It's like, well, I never saw it as, and when it transpired to go from rowing to sitting volleyball, the same thought process came up. I think I had the same conversation again, but I brought up that comment, and it kind of, you learn from past experiences. I'd had success with making the decisions that I had with rowing, be it going full time and moving away from university, move to the southeast of England to go full time. When that opportunity happened again with sitting volleyball to go full time and live in London and train there, well, it's a no-brainer. I'm not at university. I don't have so much expectations weighing on my shoulders. You saw what the outcome was from doing it. How many years previously would it have been? 2 years prior. What have you got to lose by at least giving 1 year of your time to being a full-time athlete again? So I'd probably did it for the short term and put my studies on hold from postgraduate level as well. Okay, let's give volleyball a year. If it doesn't work out, I can still go back and study. If it does, and obviously subsequently it did, that balance became difficult, but that's a different story altogether. But
Yeah.
those decisions, I think, having that open-mindedness to try and look at failure in a positive light, I think it put me in a good precedent, because it's like, well, you fail and you try again, you get back on that high horse, you get back on that bike and you go again. I think because we become adults and we're kind of conditioned to look at failure in a bad light because it's bad, whereas as youngsters, you'd probably look at it as, okay, I've fallen off this bike. Once I've taken the stabilizer off, oh well, let me get back on and keep going until I overcome this problem. I put it, and I find a solution to it, and I'm going to keep going until I find that resolution.
Yeah. A couple of things that you've talked about in the last few minutes here. One was that you use the word amputee because it makes it easier to explain things. And me personally, I tell people in most of my correspondence and online stuff that I'm totally blind because it makes things easier. You know, I do actually have light perception, but then it gets into a question of, what do you see? You know, is it shapes? Is it shadows? Is it colors? So it avoids a conversation by doing that. And then the other thing is there's been lots of times for me where it wasn't where somebody asked me, would you consider trying something? And I think that both of us have a track record of seeing these requests as short-term investments, that it's not like this is who I'm going to be for the rest of my life, so if I fail at it, it's horrible. And I think that really does allow you to be more positive about it.
Well, I think you do look at it. Sure, okay. The long-term goal was always well, I shouldn't say always has been, always had been. I'm still do athletics to a certain extent, but not to the degree that I used to. You look at it as a short, and I would say this for anybody. You don't look at your end goal as the result, because you're setting yourself up to fail. Be it if you put it as a monetary value that you wanted to attain. Well, okay. I want to attain, I'll say something that's really unrealistic now, I don't know, 60 grand in a week for some people that might be achievable, but for most it's unattainable. I've set myself up to fail straight away because I'm trying to get to this figurative amount where I've not looked at how am I going to get to that number. I've kind of plucked it out of thin air, and I think from an athlete perspective, it's easier because, okay, we have an end goal of be it the Olympics, the World Championships, Paralympics. That's 4 years away, but our schedules are designed to be, and I'll see if I can get this right, macro cycled as to be it the month, well, from a yearly perspective, then broken down to months. The months are broken down as a week, and obviously it's from days, and you look at it as overcoming the obstacles day in day out, and obviously the process is get from A to B to, okay, not everybody's going to be able to represent their country on the highest stage, but it's going to put you in a position to be able to do that, and they're going to pick the best person to then subsequently represent the team, the sport, and then the nation. So I think because we look at it as short, intermittent goals, and then you've got your medium goals as well, and you'll go back and reflect and reanalyze those. I've gone away from it a little bit as I've got older and obviously moved away from sport, but it's going back to those processes. Well, if I need to get to my result, what do I need to do from a process perspective to be able to facilitate that?
You know, I've heard over the years of all the benefits from being involved in sports, but one of them that I've never heard mentioned is that it teaches people to break big tasks up into smaller, achievable bites or steps. But it has taught you that, and it probably teaches that to a lot of other people. Now, you mentioned having the right people in your corner. Who are some of the people that have encouraged you or challenged you over the years, and how do you find these people?
Probably families have been a big one because they've got your back, be the good and the bad. Those are definite people. You're not always going to agree with them, be it. And I posted about one, a few months ago, with like, you need to believe in yourself. I had a difference of opinion with my aunt and uncle. Well, how many years are we talking about? About 11, 12 years ago. They thought sport was not a career. I was like, okay, I don't agree with you, but I'm going to hear you out and listen to what you have to say because that's how I've been brought up. But I'll take on board what you say and then implement into what I'm more passionate about, what I want to do with my life. And then obviously, probably because my mother had seen me day in, day out from the very start in sport, as long as I dedicate 100% of my work ethic into what I'm doing, she's going to support me. So I think having those sort of individuals like that, I would say probably elements of luck, be it the people that you're going to get in your corner, be it coaches, sporting directors. It generally, they had your best intention at heart, be it they were going to put you in the position to succeed, at sometimes at cost of themselves. But I think those are the individuals that you probably appreciate the most, because it's like, well, you're self-sacrificing yourself for the betterment of myself. So I think once I got to, be it the Beijing Paralympics, London Paralympics, it's my opportunity to give back. It's like, well, you've facilitated that journey to be able to put me on that stage, that platform to be successful. Now here's my chance to give back to the people closest to my heart. Okay, be it family, friends, and a lot of those people be it friends that I wouldn't call them coaches. I would pick up the phone, I won't say on a weekly basis, but a lot of time just to check, or they're checking on me, or how you doing? Are things okay? Be it from an education standpoint, are you okay physically, mentally? On that basis, they had your intentions. So it's difficult, be it to be able to probably seek them out But I think
Right.
people of that nature probably gravitate towards you. And coming back to this authentic self, being vulnerable, being your true self, those people will find you.
Right. Now, me personally, I have benefited a lot from people that I have met online, either through blog reading and commenting or social media groups. Do you how do you feel about it? Have you met any people in your online work as a coach or promoting yourself that you feel have become part of your circle?
Um, I think there's one right at this moment that the relationship is kind of growing as we're talking more and more. It was because because I'm helping with a TEDx talk in what was it, about 5 weeks from now in London as we're speaking. And he'd kind of say, "Well, what did you do to be able to get in that person's ear?" Well, I went on the offensive. I remember what I did in sport. What did I'm talking to somebody else who's been on my show, Donny Boyven. He said, do you have a mentality of being, and you could probably use any Marvel character or DC character to make the analogy, but I'll use the Hulk. Are you going to use your logic and be Bruce Banner? Are you going to be the Hulk and smash windows in, break doors down, and use that mentality of going on the offensive? I've talked to other coaches who use, be it going on the hunt and actually going out to go. The element of a hunt is to kill something, so you want to be able to be ruthless. So I kind of went out my way. Well, the information isn't per se in the public domain. I'm quite young. Well, let me use my technical nous of, okay, let's try and find a website. Let's try and find them on social media and just connect and say, pop. I'd like to find, when is the deadline for the submission of applications? Okay, I subsequently missed it. But when he came back and said, oh, would you like to help out and volunteer at the event? It's like, okay. And then it opens doors because you're willing to collaborate and be a source of support. Whereas I think within my industry per se, it's the complete opposite. You're taught from day one to be as ruthless as possible, undercut somebody, and try and probably kill their business. Whereas this support mechanism, I think where I'd started out in a gym environment was contrary to that, but that's a misnomer. That's an outlier.
Myth.
I would put it, because most of those things, it's you're coming in new, somebody's more established. Well, I'm going to stomp on your throat. Kind of, I'll use the Kobe Bryant analogy. Going for the throat. They're going to try and kill you before you step through the door. So that mentality of, it's very alien to the fitness industry. Whereas when you get the right people within your circle, the collaboration does actually transpire, because you're trying to raise yourself up together. Whereas normally it's, in the past, it'd be, let me cut the step ladder from underneath me. If you're attached to that, oh well. you can start again from the bottom, a bit like snakes and ladders kind of mentality.
Yeah. Thankfully, we live in a world where offering value and supporting other people is becoming more and more the way to get to where it is that you want to go in this world. And I loved your example of your TED's talk, because that is true in two respects. One, that you reached out to them, you stalked them, you try to connect with them, you find, and you're wanting to build a relationship that you can hopefully use to get on that stage. But when you find out you've missed the deadline, it isn't like, oh, I've missed the deadline, I can forget about this till next year. It's no, I've missed the deadline. I'm going to see if I can't help them by volunteering at the event, because those events are all volunteer organized. So they need warm bodies, as my dad used to call them. And so you've now put yourself in their ear for next year's TED's event. And, if we're talking TEDx London, that's an awfully big stage. So it's a good investment of the time and energy. And the other thing that you didn't mention is that by volunteering, you're going to rub elbows with the other speakers and other attendees. And who knows what opportunity is waiting for you while you're there performing a service and just trying to do the right thing. So I really appreciate that example you shared.
Well, it's remembering the leverage, because they can utilize, be it my past experiences. I know well, I'm say commend me. They did appreciate me sharing it. It's like, I've got no problem with it. I'm going to be there. I'm helping at the event. I think the first thing I shared was me, so I'm obviously going to do that, because everybody has vanity in them. They're going to want to promote themselves and push themselves forward into a different field, a different environment, and be able to leverage it. But for them to use my background from a sporting connection to be able to sell tickets, I'm okay with that. It's a kind of a win-win scenario.
Yeah, I totally agree with you on that last part too, because I come from a background of carnival people. I understand promotion, and there's nothing more important than putting butts in the seats, feet on the ground, or faces behind the screen. So, but a lot of people wouldn't have seen it that way. Now, just to remind people, I'm talking with James Roberts. He's a fitness coach, online fitness coach, former Paralympic champion athlete, and thankfully, he's agreed to stop by and share some of his experiences and his knowledge with us. You can find him at fitamputee.co.uk. Now, on your website, you say that you are not a guru, which I appreciate. But I was just wondering, how do you think about yourself, and what are some of the ways you help the people who you work with?
I'd go a step further, and I'd say probably I don't see myself as an expert, because this term expert is you know everything within your field. Well, okay, you are an expert towards yourself, because it's personal experiences, past experiences, and what's worked with you. It's not necessarily what works for me is what's going to work for you, and people have to remember that. Okay, I've been there and done it for other individuals, but you need to be willing to put in the sacrifice and put in the hard yards, because at times it's not going to be easy, and you have to remember that it comes to a point. There's going to be certain times that you're going to plateau. Things are going to go wrong. Things outside your control are going to have a bearing on your results. And obviously, I'm there for support, guidance, and at times probably giving you a kick up the ass that you probably some people may need, because it's like, well, okay, you're not getting the results that you want. Why is that? And I kind of not pass the buck, but put the question back into your corner as to what are you willing to do to get that result? Be it a person within, you could say, I'm going to say a nut job to a certain extent, because sporting people and people within entertainment are a little bit loopy, a little bit crazy. I don't need to give somebody a kick up the ass. I do probably periodically, because they'll get a little bit lazy, a little bit content, and get kind of rest on the laurels. And I was no different. I had to motivate myself from an outward perspective to reinvigorate myself. So come on, James, let's go again, because somebody's willing to, I'm not say challenge you, but be it. And I'll use the story now of BBC did a documentary on somebody who wanted to come into the rowing program from being, I think it would have been, 2007, I think it was. So they'd probably been in Iraq or something like that. They'd been injured. I was like, my ultimate goal is to make the Paralympics. Okay, I saw that on television. Like, no, you're not. I've definitely got something to say about that, because at the moment I'm the front runner. You would like to get there, so would I. So I'm going to be your stumbling block. So, and to kind of cut a long story short, he got binned at the first hurdle, so he wasn't good enough of standard from the first trial we had. I was thinking, well, you've done a TV program about that, and he's fallen at the first hurdle. So to a certain extent, that's embarrassment, but that's a different story altogether. So it's like, well, it reinvigorated mine to be, hell no. It's like, you're not, at the moment, I'm number one. I'm going to make sure in certain terms, and I'm not trying to be to come across arrogant, to put myself on the starting block for the Beijing game. Obviously, I subsequently did, but I did have pitfalls and hurdles on myself to overcome the following season, whereas I was put on the back foot. I think I'd only ever been beaten once on the water in the sport, but that was we competed in a double, and that's the only time I was ever beaten. Be it because the sport is unisex, that's the only time. So you're going to be at a disadvantage if you go second, because the other person's got to row twice, and the other shoe was on the other foot the following season, where I was the person that had to row twice. So it's like, well, whoever's got to go second is always at a disadvantage, because there's no way in hell the individual could be at 100%. You might be able to get back to 90%, 95. So the other 5%, where's the other person going to find it from? So I think from that basis I think where it gave me the leverage was because I'd beaten that person, be it training camps, every trial we'd run individually head to head. I'd wipe the slate clean. I'd absolutely battered him. He wasn't even on the same postcode or zip code, should I say? In terms of it was so clear cut. It's like, well, okay, they were going to make the decision.
Can I go there? Even a blind man would have been able to know who won. Come on.
Yeah, I would say so. It wasn't close.
All right. It wasn't close.
It wasn't close. But they make their final decision on that one. And I think the coaches were fair in saying to me, "We've never seen you perform so crap as to that day, prior or later on from." And I guess I succumbed to the nerves of the, well, you could say the emotional attachment to. I want to be able to realize this Olympic moment, not Olympic moment, kind of Mount Olympus moment of this is the pinnacle of sport for people with disability. And right. I think I succumbed to that emotional attachment to it. Whereas maybe for like world level, I disattach myself from it. Yes, I want to go, but I need to be here in the moment and here in the now. Whereas at that particular moment in time, I think I just succumbed to it. And I don't know what happened on that day, because trials are trials. They're exactly the same. The weather does change from that basis, but the actual course is the same. So I probably learned from that experience as, okay, you got to do a test, you got to do a trial, and go from that basis. So he's got that on me that he'd beaten me, but okay, I have the tracksuit in my wardrobe to say. I probably learned from it as to the team manager said, well, coming back to what I previously talked about, where I had to move down to the southeast. That's the reason why, as you'd beaten, what you're doing in South Wales is we can't see. We only see you periodically for training camps and things like that. So maybe you're not doing enough. So if you come under, so to speak, our wing, under our control, we can see you working your ass off day in, day out. So I think once they'd seen me move into that environment, it didn't happen as quickly as I'd probably liked. It probably didn't happen as fast as my director of sport would have liked, because it's like, because it was a lot of, not political backwards and forwards behind the scenes that I didn't see, thankfully, but it did. And then once I'd moved up there, and people could see that I am dedicated, I'm willing to put the hours in and work my ass off. Whereas I'll put to no fault of my own, being the nature of myself being laid back, it comes across and rub people up the wrong way in sporting world. It's like, well, you don't care. Why are you so laid back? Well, it's as if you could care less. It's like, well,
I'm glad you brought that up, because it doesn't just apply to sports, and pretty much anything you do in life. If you look like if your body language, your personality comes across as if you're not nervous, scared, invested, whatever word you want to use, people think you don't care, or they think you aren't bothered by something, and they maybe don't take what you're doing in that field as seriously as they would otherwise. But it's just your approach. And I think we both have a in the moment type approach to events, which means that we aren't really all that outwardly responsive or emotional outwardly because we're focused on what we're doing. What do you think? I mean,
Well, I like to stay relaxed as much as I can. That's probably
yeah,
why I do it and be laid back. It's like, well, if I'm, oh God, how would I put this? Laid out flat out on my back, no care in the world. I'm relaxed, and then the actual event moment doesn't get the better of me. It'd be okay. It's no big deal. It's and I probably wasn't to a certain extent in that state of euphoria. I think for the Olympic final, because I think I've only been once in that state, and it happened a few weeks ago. And I'm thinking, you haven't been in this state for a very long time. But I was as relaxed as can be in the most important event that I've had ever competed up to at that point, and I was relaxed. I think because for an outward perspective, be it what we'd said to the media as a medal would be a bonus, the final was the pinnacle. Okay, I've achieved that. I can relax. I'm in the top 6. Anything can happen, and kind of go for that mental. Whereas, be it on the flip side of that, my last rowing race in 2009. I can see it when I've watched it back on TV. I can see it in my face. I'm scared shitless, and I'm thinking, okay, I performed okay, but I think it was because this is my last swan song. This is my last opportunity to medal. I've got to nail it, and I think maybe if I put myself maybe in a better position mentally, and this is probably where meditation's helped me more lately. Not as I got older, but with the anxiety coming back to that, and people say, well, why don't you try it? That's been a massive help. But if I didn't actually implemented that, into my sporting career, I probably have been a better athlete, but that's all speculative.
right. And so if you had been thinking of it, say like, this is my last moment. I really should enjoy the experience. This however many meters I'm going to row today, and just soak in every moment.
I'd have never seen it like that when you're trying to explain it. As
I'm trying to make me understand how you would have seen it. I mean, I'm trying.
It's seen. I guess from yes, I could have put a more positive spin on it because what I know now and all the study that I've subsequently done, the actual, and this is for everybody's benefit now, the actual physiological response is the same. Be it if you're nervous, worried, sad, you're going to feel one way. You have this illusion that you're going to feel completely different when you're happy, excited. Physically, it's the same response. You feel you just feel a little bit. You feel a little bit better, being obviously happier than if you were sad. But the actual response is physically exactly the same thing. So it's this association that I feel worried, I'm apprehensive, I'm stressed as bad. Whereas, yeah, like you said, in terms of I could enjoy the moment. It's going to be my last opportunity to be able to do this. I think it did dawn on myself as once we'd finished and crossed the line. It's like I did break down. It's like, well, it's the last time I'm going to have this opportunity to represent my country in this sport. That one was a bit emotional, but if I'd have lapped it up and enjoyed the experience, I don't think you ever can with sport because it's like you it goes fuzzy, everything goes blank, and you go back to muscle memory and just go through what you've done through repetition. So you do. Once I get started, it's been the same with every sport. Once I get actually started, I'm fine. The worry dissipates, and you kind of go back into autopilot, and you do everything you've done before.
Right. Well, why don't you talk just a little bit about your meditation, because the one technique that you mentioned on your website, I thought that was really genius. Whoever came up with that idea.
You're talking about the step back and see if I can remember off the top of my head. Step back and watch the cars go by. That's Headspace. That is.
That's Headspace. Okay. Well, I'm not familiar with Headspace, so
it's got a video to go with it, and it is. I think when you are thinking logically, it makes sense because it's like, well, I think some people are better. My family is very good at it. But people watching, just you just sit down somewhere and just still watch the world go by, and you will forget about things and you won't worry about a thing. And I think I've been good at it and better at times. And when I do actually start going into the pitfalls of going inside my own head, it'll be, well, just take a step back and try and disconnect from your brain, so to speak, as I have control over it, but I won't let it dictate to me how I want to feel and things like that. So I think it's taking that step back and watch what you're having problems with, watch it go by, and then actually do you sense is it really this thought that's going through your head, is it as a big deal that you make it out to be? And then obviously you probably think consciously, probably not. Are you blowing it out of proportion, which most people will do, and I'm no different. And you look at it more rationally, it's like, well, is this a thought that somebody else is putting onto me? And be it like that. We come back to the story of what my aunt and uncle thought best for me. I didn't agree with it, so it's somebody else's belief, but I didn't see it for me. Okay, later down the line, okay, they're looking out for you, but it's like, well, I don't want to get a quote unquote real job. I'm fortunate enough within the United Kingdom that is a paid job. So if you're good enough, you're going to get paid. And this argument I had with my mum yesterday, she thought they get paid too much. It's like, well, it's like, well, I disagree. Okay, they don't work as the hourly rate as probably somebody working 9 to 5, but physically, it's probably, depending on what job you're going to compare and contrast with, it's probably more demanding physically. Mentally, it's probably the same, because most times within the realms of, I'm going to use normality, it's probably not the right word, but be it a 9 to 5 job, is going to be more stresses. There's somebody weighing a load on you that sometimes you can't bear by yourself, whereas sport, you don't bear the brunt of that load yourself. You've got coaches, depends how talkative you are, coaches, if you had an injury, physios, doctors, psychologists, you name it. This figurative bubble is your oyster. You can utilize that to your heart's content, well, not to heart's content, but to a certain extent. If you had a problem within those fields, there's somebody to talk to. Whereas in the normal world, and I'll use the US as to make my point more poignant, you obviously you need money to be able to facilitate that, whereas an athlete doesn't. It's at their beckoning, it's at their call. It's whether or not they utilize it.
Okay, well, before we finish, I would like you to tell the audience a little bit about what your day or life is like now, and any final thoughts you'd like to leave them with.
My day is probably a lot more stressful than it was when I was an athlete, because I'm having to oversee other people and other individuals, very much more like a managerial role. Whereas I think when I was an athlete, I could be a little bit more self-centered. Everything revolved around me, and whereas now I have to have a little bit of thinking of others, be it how they're speaking, be it, I think with the online platform makes it a lot easier, be it how they're talking about themselves on social media, how they're speaking to me, and be it face to face on Zoom, Skype, Facebook, Messenger, be it from that basis, how are you communicating, how are you feeling, and be very much a teacher, a guidance counselor, a parental figure as to, okay, take us, and very much a listener, as opposed to in the past, I could go on the offensive. It's, well, this is a problem. What do I need to do? Do I pick? A lot of times, I think this is where probably I good and bad is good, bad perspective, I'll pick up the phone and pass the problem on to a family member. And then sometimes it helps to get it out of my psyche, because, okay, I've dealt with the problem. I pass it on to somebody else, but they can't do anything about it, because it's like, well, it could be to something to do with selection. Well, they can't fight my battles, because that's going to put me in a worse predicament, because I've got family trying to fight my battles when it's at the end of the day, the buck stops at me, whether or not I win or lose. Whereas I think with that, it's trying to take certain aspects of what I learned in that into the athlete profession and put it back into my coaching role. Some of them can't come over, be it the competitive nature, be it perspective of competing. That one, I need to dial it down a little bit, or take aspects of it, because that's brutal, because you try and compare yourself with others, and you're setting up yourself to fail straight away, because it's like, well, why is such and such doing and it comes back to this thought process. You start doubting yourself again. So I think it's remembering to certain aspects I can take away, and others I need to kind of leave where they were exactly in the past.
Okay, and final thought for the listeners?
I think my final thought, Max, and that's a great question to end on, is be open. I think if you can take anything from this episode, have open-mindedness. It's try. What's the saying? Try again. And I think it's Thomas the Tank Engine, that one.
Yeah, be open to those friends, family, business connections that ask you, have you thought about trying, and fill in the blank. You still there, or did I lose you?
No, I'm still here.
Okay, all right. Well, I appreciate you taking the time to come on What's Your Excuse with me, and I look forward to hearing what the viewers and listeners have to say, and hopefully some of them will share some good positive experiences after having learned from you during the course of the hour.
Oh, I thoroughly enjoyed it, Max.
I'm glad to hear that. And you can find James at fitamputee.co.uk. And I'm proud that I only messed that up once, and I corrected myself before you did. So, is there something going on, like in the next few weeks or months, that you would like to mention to people? Is there a course, an event, anything like that?
Oh, I've just started. I pushed it off a little bit. It was supposed to start today. I've pushed it back. I've pushed it back another week, because as we're speaking, our schools not all of them, but where I live exclusively, haven't gone back to school yet. So it was a course program I was going to run for people to get ready for Christmas parties nearer Christmas. So it's a 3-month course.
Okay, a lot of stress involved in the holidays, so probably not a bad idea to get them started pretty soon. So I'm assuming they'll be able to find information about that on your website when it goes live?
Yep.
Okay, all right. Well, I look forward to that, and be sure and remind me when you start offering it, so I can help promote it and hopefully get more people to take advantage of your experiences in managing stress like that. I
appreciate that all the help I can get, Max.
All right. Well, thank you. I appreciate it, and have a good day.
You too.
All right. Bye. Okay, so we had another great conversation again this week, this time with James Roberts, and a couple of things that he pointed out that I want to remind you about is, one, he talked about people would ask him, have you thought about trying this? And it applied to his sports days. It also applied to recently when he was dealing with anxiety caused from some physical issues. So when a good friend, somebody you trust, somebody you know has your best interest at heart, comes up and says, have you thought about writing a book, or running a marathon, or selling your cupcakes in your neighborhood or on the internet? Think about it. don't just dismiss it out of hand. Don't just say, I can't, I shouldn't, I won't, that's not me. Take those opportunities. Think about them. The other thing is that meditation has value. You've heard me talk about modern meditation, where we use everyday activities like your exercise, repetitive, monotonous chores as a way of focusing, thinking, and getting out of your way for a short period of time so you can have more clarity. And so he uses an app called Headspace that I honestly will say I've never heard of until today, or if I did, it didn't register in my brain. So meditation is important to him. Also, a collaborative approach in their medical system, but that could apply to anything. I mean, if you are going to go after a big goal, you really should have a team. You know, mentors, coaches, friends, people who have done what you're going to do. Those are some things to think about. I love that he talked about seeing things from a positive mindset, and it's always cool when you hear somebody successful say that they called and asked their mom. So I think we got a lot of good stuff from James today. I hope you'll visit his website at fitamputee.co.uk. As you know, you can always find me at theblindblogger.net. I do want to remind you about my friends Chip and Pam Edwards over at Create My Voice. If your blog, podcast, or both are not on the Alexa and Google Home systems, you are missing out on a huge potential audience of millions of people who could appreciate your content, who might decide to follow what you're doing and listen to it. I spoke to Chip just yesterday, and he told me that a new feature is coming where whenever somebody listens to your blog or podcast on Alexa or Google, it's going to prompt them, do you want to be notified when the next piece of content comes out? So you get the equivalent of somebody following your blog or subscribing to your email list, but instead they're going to be subscribed on Alexa or Google, and they're going to get an audio notification. It's going to say, hey, the Blind Blogger just released a new podcast episode. Would you like to listen to it now? And so I think that's a cool feature. He knows about it because he's a developer on both platforms, which is another reason you want to hire Chip and Pam if you're going to hire anybody. You can find them at createmyvoice.com. And of course, you can find me at theblindblogger.net. That's where you can buy my books, take my courses, purchase motivational merchandise with some of my favorite sayings on them. And it's also where you can hire me to get you booked on podcasts, radio shows, and other platforms. I hope that you will visit the website, theblindblogger.net, and feel free to reach out to me. Send me an email through the contact form. I always love hearing from people. I like to be the voice that will appreciate your successes and encourage you from your disappointments. So until next time, thank you and take care out there. Buck up, little buckaroo, don't let the monkeys get to you. Hold on tight and you'll get through. Buck up, little buckaroo. Cheer up, little sunshine girl. There's lots of pain in this cruel world. Lots of rain falls on you, girl. Cheer up, little sunshine girl. Oh, it's gonna be all right. All right, I want you to know that you've come a long, 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 long way. And you've still got a long way to go.